Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday Apocryphal and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering 1 Maccabees 10 through 11.
Bam! We did it.
We are amazing.
Yep. Wonder Twins, powers activate, even though we're not twins. And they're
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
Not like you guys
Close
transform into anything either.
You don't know that.
Take form of
Biblical scholar.
this thing of water.
No.
Woo.
Here is a thing we found, and we're going to ask, Behold, furniture polish
Which
to
is,
sponsor
polish.
us.
Only visible if you have it in that way, because otherwise it's yellow
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
that's true.
glitching out the screen. It's beautiful.
That's a good point.
So beautiful.
Either way, we're going to ask them to sponsor us because behold.
Behold.
Either
Indeed.
way. First Maccabees, we're going to be covering some stuff, including Jonathan, Demetrius, some other people.
Alexander.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess, what translation do we have?
Well, I have right here before me, First Maccabees, a new translation with introduction and commentary by Jonathan A. Goldstein, the Anchor Bible version.
Yep. We also have, his translation and commentary for Second Maccabees, as well as from the New Interpreter's Bible, the Old Testament survey. We will not be using that, however. We used that in the first episode, but we do have this amazing thing from the New Interpreter's Bible. It is the New Interpreter's Bible commentary.
Yes.
And it's on a whole bunch of stuff. Esther, additions to Esther, Tobit, Judith, First and Second Maccabees, Book of Wisdom, Sirach, Daniel, and additions to Daniel, and also contains an introduction to apocalyptic literature. So there's a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah.
And we also have Erdman's commentary on the Bible.
Indeed, as well as the Oxford Companion to the Bible.
Whoop-de-doo.
Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, amazing. Either way.
We don't have any other commentaries that you want to bring up.
No,
right
I mean,
now.
we have a commentary on Second Maccabees from Armenia, but
Yeah,
we'll get to that.
we will. Well, I'll start us off at chapter 10.
And I think I should introduce this.
Yes.
Don't you think I should do that?
I think you should too. There's also a very long introductory note in this.
Okay, fantastic. So on this entire chapter, Erdman's says, First Maccabees narrative has passed over some 7 years, during which we must assume that Demetrius I continued to rule Judea through his officials and loyal Jewish subjects, and that Jonathan and his followers remained quiet since their suppression by Bacchides, his army and his garrisons. The political situation was changed by the arrival in 152 BCE of Alexander Epiphanes, also called Alexander Balas, as a pretender to the Seleucid throne. Claiming to be Antiochus IV's son, he first won the support of Attalus II, king of Pergamum, in 158 BCE, and then of Rome. When Alexander struck, Demetrius was losing popularity both at home and abroad by political misjudgments and personal arrogance. The position was further complicated by Ptolemy VI Philometor's permanent ambition of regaining Coele and Palestine from the Seleucids. Jonathan was well placed to take advantage of this situation.
I see.
Yeah, that's the introduction.
All right. Well, there's a little bit here before I get into it from Goldstein.
Sure.
He says, this ran from September 20th, 153 to October 9th, 152 BCE. The forceful Demetrius for a while managed to hold and even to strengthen the crumbling Seleucid Empire. From the beginning, he faced the hostility of the superpower, Rome, for he had become king over the opposition of the Senate. Demetrius made strenuous diplomatic efforts to win the favor of Rome, and a Roman embassy headed by his friend Tiberius Gracchus, I guess,
Okay.
consented to address him as king, according to Polybius, probably in 160. Nevertheless, the Senate remained basically hostile. They sent him the frigid message that they would accord to him the kind of treatment provided his behavior in his reign proved satisfactory to the Senate, according to Polybius. All the kingdoms of the eastern Mediterranean, however, were overawed by Rome. The fact of Rome's hostility to Demetrius quickly led Eratosthenes, king of the nearby kingdom of Cappadocia, to break his engagement to marry Demetrius' sister, probably already in 161.
Yeah, we're going to cover that marriage.
Mm. Yeah. Although Demetrius retaliated by vigorously supporting Oriphernes, a pretender to the Cappadocian throne, against Ariarathes, Oriphernes eventually proved to be both incompetent and hostile, and Ariarathes, despite only half-hearted support from Rome, became a dangerous enemy. So did Ariarathes' ally, King Attalus II of Pergamum. Although Demetrius had once had friendly relations with Ptolemy VI, that king too turned hostile, perhaps merely following Rome's example, but also probably having the real grievance of a plot by Demetrius to seize control of the Ptolemaic island of Cyprus in 156/5. We are told that Ariarathes, Attalus, and Ptolemy were all involved in raising Alexander Epiphanes.
Epiphanes, that's fine.
Epiphanes as a pretender against Demetrius. The Hasmonean party consistently supported the pretender, so that it is not surprising to find our author and Josephus saying nothing to indicate that Alexander's claims to be a son of Antiochus IV were widely doubted, even by some Jews. Since our author had ample documents from both branches of the house of Demetrius I to confirm the Simonean Hasmonean claims, he had no need to lie about Alexander, for in doing so, he would only validate grants by the extant Seleucid line of Antiochus IV to the extant male line of Hasmoneans descended from Jonathan. Hence, our author simply believed Alexander's claims. On the other hand, all the other surviving non-Jewish sources say that Alexander's claims to be a Seleucid were false. They may all, however, reflect only the propaganda of the ultimately victorious Seleucid line of Demetrius I. Our evidence does not suffice to let us know the truth. Antiochus IV could have had a surviving son, and Demetrius' enemies did not need a real son of Antiochus to set up a pretender.
Yeah, so definitely his sonship is doubted.
Yes. So let's
hop into it.
In the year 160, Alexander Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, landed and captured Ptolemais, where the people accepted him and he was proclaimed king. When the news reached King Demetrius, he assembled a very large army and marched out to meet him in battle. At the same time, Demetrius sent a letter to Jonathan, couched in peaceful terms, promising to raise him to high rank. In his mind was the thought, let us be the first to act and make peace with him before he makes a pact with Alexander against us. Surely he will remember all the injuries we have perpetrated upon him and upon his brothers and upon the nation.
So on the dating, there was actually an interesting note here from Erdman's.
Mm-hmm.
This is on 1 through 2, honestly, those two verses. The dates given in 10:1 and 21 pose a chronological problem. Most scholars believe that the date in verse 1 is based on the Seleucid Maccabean autumn, 312 BC era. Of course, if you remember, our first episode of First Maccabees, we were talking about the two different calendars that were probably used.
Right.
That Goldstein notes.
Goldstein does also make a connection with the Seleucid Maccabean calendar.
Sure. So I'll continue this. On this dating year, 160 began in autumn 153 BC. Verse 21 says that Jonathan assumed the high priesthood in the 7th month of the year 160 at the Feast of Booths. If this date is based on the Seleucid Babylonian spring 312 BC era, Jonathan assumed high priesthood at Tabernacles 153 BC. Within a fortnight of Alexander's arrival at Ptolemais, assuming he arrived in autumn at the beginning of the year 160. This is not impossible, but it seems unlikely. If then, verse 21 uses the Seleucid Babylonian spring 311 BC era, Jonathan became high priest in autumn 152 BC. Alexander, having arrived at Ptolemais in autumn 163 BCE, or perhaps more likely in spring or summer 152 BCE, still within year 160 of the Seleucid Maccabean autumn 312 era. If both dates are based on a spring 312 BC era, then Alexander perhaps arrived in summer 153 BC, and Jonathan assumed high priesthood in autumn 153 BC. If both dates are based on a spring 311 era, then both events happened 1 year later. Most scholars accept that Jonathan's high priesthood, at least, began in autumn 152 BCE.
All right. Accordingly, Demetrius conferred upon Jonathan power to raise troops and manufacture arms, and made him his ally, and also included an order that the hostages in the Acra be turned over to him. Jonathan marched into Jerusalem and had the letter read aloud to all the people and to the men of the Acra. Great was their fear when they heard that the king had granted him power to raise troops. The men of the Acra handed over to Jonathan the hostages, and he restored them to their parents. Jonathan took up residence in Jerusalem and began to rebuild and renovate the city. He ordered those in charge of the enterprise to use squared stone for strength in building the city walls and the circuit around Mount Zion. They did so. The foreigners in the forts built by Maccabees fled.
So what verse did you just read?
12.
Okay, so on the stone, he uses the kind of stone King Josiah is said to have used to rebuild the temple in 2 Chronicles.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does mention Josiah here, using expensive hewn or squared stone. So...
Oh, and here's something interesting on the stones. Herodian blocks, that's what they're called here. They're actually smaller than Herodian blocks. There are probably those to be seen today on the east wall of the temple enclosure, 32 meters from the southeast corner.
I can't recall it off the top of my head, but I was there. Okay, every one of them deserted his post and returned to his own land. Only in Beth Zur remained some of those who had deserted the Torah and the commandments. The place served as their refuge. When King Alexander heard of the promises which Demetrius had sent to Jonathan, and he was told of the wars and heroic deeds of Jonathan and his brothers, and of the hardships they had endured, he exclaimed, "Will we ever find his like? Indeed, let us make him our friend and ally right now."
So, of course, if you remember Mattathias, he was offered a friendship.
Yes.
And, of course, friend of the king was, as the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary notes, excuse me. Friend of the king was not the highest ranking title in the Seleucid hierarchy. And furthermore, it pretty much just meant someone was an advisor.
Mm-hmm. Accordingly, he wrote a letter and sent it to Jonathan as follows, quote, "King Alexander to his brother Jonathan, greeting. We have heard about you, that you are a valorous man and worthy to be our friend. Accordingly, we hereby appoint you today as high priest of your nation and confer upon you the title friend of the king. Alexander also sent Jonathan a purple robe and a gold crown, so that you may support our cause and maintain friendship toward us. There's a note in here that says a purple robe was the uniform of the friends of the king. But here we have the standard equipment of a priest in the Hellenistic period, a purple robe and a gold crown. See Meyer Reinhold, History of Purple as a Status Symbol in Antiquity.
That was discussed in a previous episode that we had, actually.
Yeah.
Talk about conches being rather rare and having that purple dye being in a venomous slug. There you go.
Also, yeah, as you were noting, the purple robe, but also priests in the Hellenistic period, they wore purple robes and gold crowns.
Right, which is what he was given.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the vestments of the Jewish high priest included a blue robe and a gold frontlet. The blue dye, indeed, was maintained by the same malleus as the purple, but our author's vocabulary clearly differentiates the purple robe sent by Alexander from the sacred vestments donned by Jonathan.
So one of the things on the wording, I know it's a different part, but the flattering letter that Alexander writes Jonathan calling him brother, a title reserved for the highest dignitaries, is not written in good Greek. The phrase man of valor is frequently used in the Septuagint. Of course, we've been over the men of valor before, the mighty men.
The mighty men.
Yeah.
They were pretty cool.
Yeah, they were pretty cool.
Except for those parts where they listed too many of them in really poor detail.
Yeah.
By the way,
Jonathan put on the sacred vestments in the 7th month of the year 160, on the festival of the tabernacles. He also raised troops and manufactured...
So that would be October 152 BCE.
Okay. He also raised troops and manufactured large quantities of arms.
And it's also kind of strange that this occurs just 5 days after the celebration of Yom Kippur.
Yeah. Which is a very important holiday to
Yeah,
Jews.
it is.
Okay. When news of these developments reached Demetrius, he was troubled and said, "How did we come to let Alexander get ahead of us in gaining the friendship and support of the Jews? I, too, shall send them a letter offering inducements, promising them honor and rewards, so that they may come to the aid of my cause." He sent them the following message. "King Demetrius, to the nation of the Jews, greeting. Since you have kept the terms of your agreements with us and have continued your friendship with us and have not gone over to our enemies, we have rejoiced at the news."
So, what verse are you on currently?
26.
Okay. So on this entire letter in general, in contrast to the previous two letters, 10:3 and 18, Demetrius now addresses one to the nation of the Jews. While it does mention the high priesthood, it does not name Jonathan at all. This has led some scholars to hold either that the letter does not belong in its present context, or that in fact Demetrius thought he could gain the allegiance of Jews who may have been opposed to Jonathan and his supporters. I'm going to talk about that, it possibly not being original in a little bit.
Apparently, there's really bad syntax throughout this letter.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I will bring up.
I is the original author, non-grammar bad.
I bet that's actually it. I bet that it was written poorly on purpose to make Demetrius look like an idiot.
That is possible.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But if it really is that bad, then maybe it was intentional.
Well, let's find out.
Yep, let's find out. "Continue now to maintain your loyalty to us, and we shall repay you for your good conduct towards us, with many exemptions and rewards. I hereby release you and exempt all Jews from payments both of the salt price and from the crown dues, taxation, obviously.
Yeah.
I abandon from today on my claim to receive the sums due me.
And of course, the mention of a salt tax may indicate that the Jews originally delivered to the king a quantity of salt, for which later a payment in cash was substituted. Note, however, that Demetrius II later relinquishes claims to the salt pits later in First Maccabees. Actually, later in the readings today.
Yeah, you know what? I bet there is a note in here about this salt tax, but I'm sure it breaks down to it's a
for what
tax
this just
on
said.
salt.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Right. So, I abandon from today on my claim to receive the sums due me, of the value of 1/3 of the sown crops and the value of 1/2 of the fruit of the trees from the land of Judah. And there's a break. From the 3 gnomes, there's a break. From today for all time. I'm going to look in here because there were 2 breaks there, and
Something about 3 gnomes?
Yeah, what verse is that?
30.
30, verse 30. Okay. Apparently it's 3 districts that are named in the letter. Yeah.
A literal rendering of the amended verse would be, I abandon my claim to receive the value of 1/3 of the sown crops and the value of 1/2 of the fruit of the trees, which I have the right to receive. In Greek, the clause, which I have the right to receive, is a participle phrase, which probably modifies both 1/3 and 1/2. Great. Also strange, if a regular tax on produce is involved, is that the extremely high rate of 1/3 to 1/2 of the crop.
That's
That's
insane.
huge.
Yeah. Okay. I declare Jerusalem to be sacred and, along with her territory, exempt from tithes and tolls. I also give up my authority over the Acra in Jerusalem and confer it on the high priest.
Yeah, these are some major concessions.
Yeah. So that he may station there a garrison of whatever men he chooses. All Jewish persons taken prisoner from the land of Judah to place in my kingdom I set free without ransom. Let all treat them and their cattle as exempt from taxes. All Jewish festivals and Sabbaths and new moons and appointed days, as well as the 3 days before a festival and the 3 days after a festival, shall be days of freedom from sales taxes and of exemption for all Jews in my kingdom, during which no one shall have power to collect money from or harass any of them for any reason.
So,
Wow.
He's just being super, super nice. I mean, he was kind of a dick before, clearly. But dang.
These are actually unreasonable concessions.
yeah, I completely agree. So the release of all Jewish slaves throughout the entire Seleucid kingdom without compensation and cancellation of all customs and tolls on their way back to Judea are highly magnanimous and highly improbable.
They all get a pony.
It didn't say slaves in this translation. It
Oh,
said
well.
Jewish persons taken prisoner.
Oh, well, that is a little bit different, but apparently the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary uses slaves.
Let up to 30,000 Jews be enrolled in the royal army. They shall receive the compensation due all members of the royal army. I'm assuming this was like a big honor or something, right?
I'm guessing.
Garrisons drawn from them shall be stationed in the important royal fortresses, and men drawn from them shall be assigned to positions of trust in my kingdom. Their officers and commanders shall be drawn from their own ranks. They shall follow their own laws, in accordance with the king's decree concerning the land of Judah. The 3 nomes which are to be taken from the territory of Samaria and annexed to Judea shall be annexed to Judea in the sense of complete union, so as to be subject to no other authority than the high priests. Ptolemaeus and her possessions I grant as a gift to the sanctuary in Jerusalem to pay for the current expenses of the sanctuary. I also grant annually 15,000 shekels of silver from the royal revenue accounts drawn from my place in my domain.
So he's personally paying these people.
Holy shit.
Oh, yeah. No more taxes, free money. Here you
go. Yeah.
You wouldn't even see terms like this if they lost a war against them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And if there should be any surplus which the officials in charge shall not have paid out, they shall apply from now on, as in former years, to the needs of the temple. In addition, our claims to the 5,000 shekels, which temple officials annually use to take from the account, are hereby abandoned, inasmuch as the money rightfully belongs to the ministering priests.
Wow.
Whoever takes refuge at the temple in Jerusalem or anywhere within its precincts, whether owing a debt to the king or to anyone else, shall be free from distraint upon his persons and upon any of his property throughout my kingdom. The expenses of rebuilding and renovating the appurtenances of the sanctuary shall be paid from the royal account. The expenses of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem and of constructing its circuit of fortification shall be paid from the royal account, as well as those of building town walls in Judea. Yeah.
That's the end of the letter, right?
He's literally giving him everything.
Yes.
Wait, that's the end of it?
That's the end of the letter.
Oh, jeez. But he's giving him everything.
I know, everything. Oh. But the interesting thing to note is that the usual conclusion to a letter is missing.
Yes.
And now we can talk about some of the crazy shit that is being offered here.
Yeah.
And
this would probably economically cripple his kingdom.
Probably. So Demetrius I offers seem extravagant compared with those of Demetrius II and are highly suspicious. J. Murphy O'Connor has observed that this letter combines two genres of writing, 10, 29 through 30, 32, 33, maybe 34, and 39 through 40 are in the first person singular, and these verses contain the most unlikely offers, including the cancellation of tribute and major tax exemptions, the handing over of the citadel, the gift of Ptolemaeus and its lands, and the annual grant of 15,000 shekels. Then, 1031, 34.
Just giving up on his kingdom.
I know.
He's like, yeah, I'm just going to set it up to fail and leave.
I know. Then 1031, maybe 34, 35, 36 through 38, and 41 through 45 are expressed in impersonal style and contain more plausible concessions, tax freedom and inviolability for Jerusalem, immunities for pilgrims, permission for Jews to enlist in the army, the transfer to Judea of 3 Samaritan districts, government support for the temple, and remission of tax on temple revenues, release for those in asylum on account of debt to the king, and the rebuilding and restoration of the sanctuary and the walls of Jerusalem and Judea. Many of these would be appropriate to Demetrius's situation. For example, winning Jewish favor by support for the temple, its personnel, and its worshippers. And some are substantial. For example, rebuilding walls, but Demetrius may have had no intention of fulfilling such an offer. However, this group of concessions falls short of the cancellation of tribute and the handing over of the citadel, which would really mean the independence of Judea. Murphy O'Connor is thus suggesting that these latter offers form the substance of the original letter. The verses cast in the first person, making extravagant offers, have been brought forward from a later situation and incorporated into Demetrius's the first letter. Release from tribute is not granted until Simon's time, and the Seleucids never returned the citadel. Simon captured it from them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Yeah, I was about to.
Fine.
Hurry up.
When Jonathan and the people heard these words, they distrusted the proposals and rejected them, because they remembered the great injury he had done to Israel and the harsh oppression he had inflicted upon them. They favored Alexander because he was the original cause of their opportunities for peaceful discussions. Accordingly, they remained allies of Alexander as long as he lived. Now, there's a bit in the notes that he has here. Small wonder that Jonathan distrusted offers probably designed to wean people away from him. Even the people may have been glad to choose the side of Alexander because of the harsh treatment they had previously received from Demetrius. Those Jews who favored Demetrius now must have been too afraid of Jonathan's growing power to do anything. The end of verse 47 has proved difficult for translators, since archegos normally means originator, and by our author's own account, Demetrius made overtures to Jonathan and the Jews before Alexander. However, with my translation, all is logical. Alexander was indeed the original cause of the Jews' opportunity. Josephus, in his paraphrase, passes over our verse in silence in Antiquities of the Jews. Since Alexander Bolus had a bad reputation with the Greco-Roman audiences for whom Josephus wrote, Josephus avoided mention of Jewish sympathy for Alexander's cause. Furthermore, Josephus may well have been apprehensive over the strange impression created by quoting Demetrius's sweeping concessions only to record that the Jews rejected them.
So, because you just finished 47, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so on verse 48, 1048 clearly continues from verse 2. The author, as elsewhere, has inserted large sections of material into a narrative framework. I mean, those letters that we read.
Okay.
Yeah.
King Alexander assembled a large army and encamped opposite Demetrius. When the two kings joined battle, Alexander's army fled. Demetrius pursued him, but Alexander's forces stiffened against his.
So here's something that I think is really interesting. The NRSV footnote indicates that some ancient texts read for verse 49 that Alexander fled and Demetrius pursued. According to Josephus, on the left wing, Demetrius's troops put Alexander's to flight, but on the right, Demetrius was killed after fierce resistance. The present NRSV text suggests that Alexander had the upper hand from the start.
Yes. The battle raged fiercely until sunset, and in the course of a day, Demetrius fell. Thereupon, Alexander sent an embassy to Ptolemy, king of Egypt, bearing the following message. I have returned to my kingdom and ascended the throne of my ancestors and have taken power. I have defeated Demetrius and have conquered our territory. Indeed, I joined battle with him, and he and his army were defeated by us, and I have ascended to the throne of his kingdom. Therefore, let us now establish ties of friendship between us. Give me now your daughter to wife, and I shall become your son-in-law, and give you and her gifts in accordance with your dignity.
So, one of those royal marriages.
Yeah. King Ptolemy set out from Egypt with his daughter Cleopatra and came to Ptolemais in the year 162. When King Alexander came to meet him, Ptolemy gave him the hand of his daughter Cleopatra and celebrated her marriage in Ptolemais in royal style with great pomp. Alexander wrote to Jonathan, inviting him to come and meet him. Jonathan set out in pomp for Ptolemais.
Oh, by the way, with pomp,
they were dressed well.
Yeah, Jonathan is also equated with the two kings as he travels with pomp.
Where he met the two kings and gave them and their friends silver and gold and many other gifts and won their favor. At the same time, a group of factious, it's not facetious, it's factious. It's also broken between two lines. and wicked men of Israel conspired against him, thinking to lodge complaints against him, but the king paid them no heed. Instead, the king gave orders to remove Jonathan's clothing and to dress him in purple, and the orders were carried out. The king had Jonathan sit with him and then said to his officers, "Go with him into the center of the city and proclaim that no one is to lodge complaints against him for any cause, nor is anyone to harass him for any reason." Accordingly, when those who came to lodge complaints perceived the distinction conferred upon him through the proclamation and saw him wearing purple, they all fled. The king also conferred upon him the distinction of enrolling him in the list of the friends of the first rank, and appointed him strategos and meridarches. Jonathan returned safe and joyful to Jerusalem. On those last ranks there, by becoming strategos and meridarches, Jonathan probably became military and civil governor of the province of Judea. The civil and military governor of the province of Samaria appears to have borne the same title.
Fair enough.
In the year 165, Seleucus Macedonian extended from September 25th, 148 through October 13th, 147 BCE. Demetrius, son of Demetrius, came from Crete to the land of his ancestors. King Alexander, on receiving the news, was deeply troubled and returned to Antioch. Demetrius reappointed Apollonius, the incumbent governor over Coele Syria. Apollonius assembled a large force and encamped at Jamnia. There he sent the following message to Jonathan, the high priest. "Only you rebel against us. Because of you, I have become a laughingstock and an object of reproach. Why are you lording it over us in your mountains? If you now have confidence in your troops, come down against us in the plain and let us take the measure of one another there, because on my side is the power of the cities."
Let me know when you're done with his message, by the way.
Okay. "Ask, and you will learn who I am, and who are the others coming to my aid. They will tell you that your fleet cannot stand before us, because twice your ancestors were routed in their land. Now, too, you will not be able to withstand such cavalry and infantry in the plain, where there is neither rock, nor pebble, nor a place to flee." That's the end of his spiel.
Great. So there are a few things I want to note. So his message is intended to lure Jonathan and his army to the plain where Apollonius's cavalry and the support of the coastal cities in the rear would give him the advantage. And then this notes that a lot of the themes and a lot of the phrasings are taken from earlier narratives. So, for example here, Apollonius sends a warrior's taunt and boast to Jonathan, emphasizing that it would be a disgrace for him to fight such a puny adversary, recalling how Goliath had mocked David, and how the experienced fighter Abner does not wish to fight his less experienced foe Asahel, Asahel, but when forced to, kills him in 2 Samuel. Apollonius contrasts Jonathan, a hill person, with his own city forces on the plain. It is a taunt that was made earlier by the Arameans against Israel. The statement that there would be no stone or pebble recalls the David and Goliath episode as well. The reference to ancestral defeats may allude to Judas's defeats at Beth Zechariah and Elasa, but the use of ancestral, pater, suggests rather the Philistine defeat of the Israelites and the defeat of Saul. One should note the contrast between Apollonius' cavalry and Jonathan's forces, which are predicted to be unable to withstand such a mobile force. The battle description will maintain this contrast between cavalry and infantry.
All right. About this part of the chapter, Goldstein says our passage clearly draws on 1 Kings 20, 23 through 32.
Yeah.
As usual, our author avoids directly mentioning divine intervention.
Right, because we're just supposed to think it's divine intervention.
Right. He says his audience, knowing the story in Kings, would readily jump to such conclusions. I think that maybe. Unlike Ahab in Kings, Jonathan did not make the impious mistake of sparing the enemy. Only respectful and probably uninvolved Ascalon received his clemency. It also has a bit here. It says, Alexander proved to be an inept and lazy king. His own incompetence in the conduct of his subordinates made him unpopular with his subjects. And other evidence may indicate how unsteady was the ruling hand of the king. Young Demetrius II was just a teenager when he took advantage of Alexander's ineptitude and pressed his own claims on the Seleucid throne. When Demetrius I had sent his 2 sons for safety to the Greek city of Knidos, he sent with them a large sum in gold. Using that money, young Demetrius secured Cretan mercenaries and landed in the Seleucid border province of Cilicia. Alexander had begun as a pretender from the same area. So that I thought was noteworthy.
Sure.
Stirred on hearing the words of Apollonius, Jonathan took 10,000 picked men and marched out from Jerusalem and was joined by his brother Simon, who came with reinforcements. Jonathan encamped by Joppe, or Jope, or Jop, or Jope.
I have no idea, man.
Who knows?
Mine says Joppa.
Joppe.
Oh, yeah, that's different. Mine says Joppa. Although in Russian, if you pronounce it Zhopa, it means butt.
Okay, it's Jopa.
Now, all of you know that.
Yep. On receiving the news, Apollonius took 3,000 cavalry and a large force of infantry and marched toward Azotus, as if traveling through, at the same time leading on to the plain because of his confidence in his large cavalry force. Jonathan pursued him towards Azotus, where the armies joined battle. Apollonius left a hidden force of 1,000 cavalry to the rear of the Jews. Jonathan perceived that there was an ambush to his rear. The enemy and his army surrounded and shot arrows at his men from morning till evening. The men, however, stood their ground as Jonathan had ordered, and the enemy's horses grew tired. Then Simon drew out his troops and engaged the enemy phalanx. The enemy cavalry was exhausted, so that they broke before him and fled. With their cavalry dispersed over the plain, the enemy fled to Azotus and sought to save themselves by going into Beth Dagon, the temple of their idol.
Yes, so before we talk about that temple, here are some notes on this battle. In this description, Jonathan's infantry stands fast while the cavalry grows tired, the exact opposite of Jesus Christ, I can't talk. Apollonius's taunt. Note that the word translated his men is literally people, laus, perhaps to emphasize the national quality of Jonathan's group. Several details are missing from this picture. Where is Jonathan's cavalry? It would be foolish for a commander not to have cavalry to protect the flanks and rear of his infantry, nor are we told what kind of cavalry Apollonius had. Did he deploy super heavy cavalry, the cataphracts, which were heavily armed, as well as skirmishing mounted archers? The archers would try to make breaks in the infantry formation. The cataphracts would attack infantry, but were not too effective against a fully defensive phalanx, and because of their heavy armor, would tire easily. It appears that Jonathan and Simon kept up a circular defensive posture with their shields up and their long pikes extended, so that the heavy cavalry troops could not penetrate and the arrows could be deflected.
Yeah, it's kind of like a big action scene.
It's a really weird action scene.
Yeah.
The new strategy is being enforced.
But what do you know about Dagon?
Well, of course, Dagon was the
Deep sea guy.
god of the Philistines, I'm pretty sure.
Mhm.
In fact, we had that the narrative earlier where there was the destruction of the statue of Dagon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
So
a sea god.
I have
right?
no idea.
I assume it's a sea god. It looks like a sea god when I see it, like pictures of.
I
statues.
haven't looked at a statue of Dagon in a while, I guess.
Well, Jonathan, however, set fire to Azotus and the surrounding towns and plundered them. The temple of Dagon, along with those who had taken refuge there, he burned.
Just like they did in 1 Samuel.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Pretty
it. Yeah,
hardcore.
just like they did that, yeah.
Yep. They're all dead. The number of those who fell by the sword plus those who were burned to death reached 8,000. From there, Jonathan withdrew and encamped against Ascalon. But the townspeople came out to welcome him with great pomp. Of course they did.
Yeah, of course they did.
Yeah. Thereupon Jonathan and his men returned to Jerusalem loaded with much booty. When King Alexander heard of these
Aren't
events,
we all?
he conferred even more distinction upon Jonathan. He sent him a gold brooch, such as was customarily given to persons with the title kinsman of the king. And
Brooch?
it says brooch, B-R-O-O-C-H. Brooch is B-R-O-A-C-H.
Yeah, weird.
And granted him Acheron with its entire territory to be his heritage. And that is the end of this chapter. There's just a note here on this rank that he got. A person with the title kinsman was of still higher rank than the friends. A kinsman was entitled to fasten his purple cloak with a golden brooch.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So brooch is brooch.
Yeah.
Ah.
The gift of
But he gets to fasten it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The gift of the old
What a
Philistine
privilege.
town of Acheron, or Ekron, made Jonathan now similar to David, who had received Ziklag as his heritage in return for his services to a pagan king.
Well,
Which you pointed out,
that's-
1 Samuel.
Yeah, and that is the end of chapter 10.
Yes, if you are enjoying the stream so far, give it a like, subscribe, send it to all of your friends who are quarantined.
Yeah, send it to all your quarantine friends. What are you doing? What are you not doing here? Like, for all the people that aren't here, what are you not doing here? You're in quarantine. You should be here.
Yeah.
So get the message out to all of your quarantined buddies.
We want
or
them
else,
here.
or else.
Or else.
All right. So anyways, we can hop right into chapter 11, shall we? Thanks, buddy. Meanwhile, the king of Egypt assembled troops as numerous as the sand on the seashore and many ships. His aim was to conquer Alexander's kingdom by treachery and add it to his own. He set out for Syria, professing peaceful intentions. Yeah, just like the Demetrius did.
There's a note in this NIB commentary. The author of First Maccabees, who favors Alexander because of Jonathan's alliance with him, portrays Ptolemy as a treacherous land grabber. Other historians state that Ptolemy really came to help Alexander, but turned against him, either because he saw Alexander's incompetence or because of an attempt on Ptolemy's life by Alexander's minister Ammonius. See verse 10. The author describes Ptolemy as being deceitful like the Seleucids before him. Some of the southern coastal towns may have been friendly towards Demetrius II, as Jamnia and Joppa and Azotus had been, and so Ptolemy's garrisoning of them may have been a prudent action. The author of First Maccabees interprets the action as a sinister move against the trusting Alexander.
Yeah, I bet. That's what it looks like.
Sorry.
Oh my God. Anyways, he dropped something. He broke something. I can't believe you broke something,
It doesn't
Chris.
break. It's just metal. It's fine.
Okay, well, you broke something. At town after town, the people opened their gates and came out to meet him, because King Alexander had issued an order to go out to meet him, inasmuch as Ptolemy was his father-in-law. As Ptolemy marched into each town, he would detach troops to be a garrison there. So he was policing the world at this point. He was like the United States. When he drew near Azotus, they displayed to him the burnt temple of Dagon and the ruined town and suburbs of Azotus, still strewn with the unburied corpses of the slain, and also the bodies of those who had been burned to death by Jonathan in the course of the fighting. The burnt corpses the townspeople had heaped up along Ptolemy's route. They told the king what Jonathan had done, intending to bring the king's censure upon him. But the king said nothing. Jonathan came in pumped to Joppe, or I'll just go with Joppa. How about that?
Yep.
To meet the king. They exchanged greetings and slept over in the town. Then Jonathan marched with the king as far as the river called Eleutherus, and returned to Jerusalem. Thus, King Ptolemy became master of the coastal cities as far as Seleucia by the sea. All the while, he was devising evil schemes against Alexander. He sent ambassadors to King Demetrius with the following proposal.
What verse are you at?
9. I'm in 9 right now.
Okay, tell me when you get to 13.
Okay. Come, let us make a pact. I shall give you my daughter, who was formerly Alexander's wife. You will be king over your father's kingdom, for I now have come to regret having given Alexander my daughter, inasmuch as he has plotted to kill me. Ptolemy accused Alexander because he coveted Alexander's kingdom. He took his daughter from Alexander and gave her to Demetrius, breaking off relations with Alexander so that they became open enemies. It's time for war. That's what it sounds like to me. Ptolemy thereupon marched into Antioch and placed upon his own head the diadem of Asia. Thus, he wore 2 diadems around his head, one for Egypt and one for Asia.
He literally wore 2 crowns at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing that happened.
Dual-wield.
That is a thing that happened in Egypt. They had a crown for Upper Egypt and a crown for Lower Egypt.
And then they mixed them together from then on, and now
did.
you've got the red crown and the white crown.
Yes.
And they look much better together, actually.
I think so, too.
It's weird. It's like, did they think about that? Did they know that was going to happen? No.
Maybe
But it
not.
looks aesthetically fine.
Yeah.
So the campaign that's been described here, according to Eerdmans, probably took place in 167.
Okay.
The NIB commentary states that we're not sure where Demetrius and Alexander were. Josephus records that Demetrius landed in Cilicia, and First Maccabees places Alexander there also, whereas Diodorus Siculus locates Alexander in Antioch at the time of Ptolemy's about face. Eerdman says about this Crown of Asia thing, the climax of Ptolemy's march was his entry into Antioch, where, according to 1 Maccabees 11:13, Ptolemy put on the crown of Asia, in fact, a white woolen band, often visible on Seleucid coins. According to Diodorus, however, Ptolemy declined the Seleucid Empire, preferring to annex only Coele Syria, probably for fear of inviting attack from Rome.
Well, now we know that.
Yes.
All this time, King Alexander had been in Cilicia because the people there were in revolt. On receiving the news, Alexander marched to meet Ptolemy in battle. Ptolemy came out against him with a strong force and routed him. While Alexander fled into hiding in Arabia, King Ptolemy reached the peak of his power. So I think there should be a note that I underlined about Arabia.
Yes, about Arabia.
I should have that. It's supposed to be...
Yes, Arabia here would refer to the northern desert east of Damascus.
Okay. So you all know where that's placed. Zabdiel the Arab cut off Alexander's head and sent it to Ptolemy. Ptolemy, however, died on the third day thereafter, and his men occupying the strongholds were massacred by the native troops in the strongholds. As a result, Demetrius became king in the year 167. So that was a very quick rise. It seems like they were doing their own thing, and Demetrius kind of sat back and eventually just kind of took over.
Yep. And the NIB commentary says he became king in 145 BCE.
Okay. For the calendar we are now using. Yeah. All right. I want to talk more about how he cut off his head.
Yeah.
Either way. Soon thereafter, Jonathan gathered the people of Judea for a fight to finish against the Acra in Jerusalem. Which, they would have had that if they accepted the deal from Demetrius, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
maybe. They constructed extensive siege works against it. Thereupon, certain haters of their own nation, lawless men, went to the king and reported to him that Jonathan was besieging the Acra. #haters. On hearing the news, the king was enraged. Immediately on hearing it, he set out, and on reaching Ptolemais, he wrote Jonathan to desist from the siege and to come to meet him for discussions at Ptolemais forthwith.
The word for meeting can have both a positive and a negative, i.e. battle, connotation. So Jonathan's decision to go, which we'll see shortly.
Yeah, it's like when Chris Hansen says, take a seat. Why don't you take a seat?
Yeah.
Like, the words take a seat aren't scary, but when Chris Hansen says take a seat, it's scary.
Maybe
you. That should never be a situation. Don't have that happen.
Yeah, I'm not putting myself in a situation where Chris Hansen's going to show up and tell me to take a seat.
That's bad.
What about Chris number one? His name's Chris Hansen. What if he tells you to take a seat?
That's, he's still Chris Hansen, so it's... Either way, on receiving the message, Jonathan ordered that the siege continue. Then, with a chosen retinue of elders of Israel and priests, he took the risk of going. Taking with him silver and gold and raiment and many other gifts, he set out to meet the king at Ptolemais and won a favorable reception. Wicked fellows from our nation brought complaints against Jonathan. But the king treated him just as his predecessors had, raising him to high rank in the presence of all the king's friends. So I think there should be some commentary about, what's the word I'm looking for? When somebody, they have to be coronated again, basically. Because there's a new king now.
Right. What verse was that?
That was verse 26.
26. Just as Alexander had not listened to complaints against Jonathan, so too neither does Demetrius II. He confirms Jonathan in the high priesthood as one of the king's chief friends, and possibly with the privilege of levying troops and the offices of general and governor of the province.
And, well, I guess maybe you'll see it eventually.
Yeah.
But either way, so the king, obviously in the presence of the king's friends, all the advisors, thus Demetrius confirmed him in the high priesthood and in the other privileges he previously held, and had him reckoned among the friends of the first rank. Friends of the first rank. I'm guessing that's an even higher position. That's what he was given before, right?
Yeah, it's like
He's
they're,
being reconferred.
they're
Remember?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
matching his honors that he had.
Yeah, because there's
previously.
a new king. Got to happen again.
Yeah.
Jonathan asked the king to make Judea free of tribute, together with the 3 toparchies of Samaritus, promising him in return 300 talents. Now, this is a more reasonable deal. The king consented and had a letter written for Jonathan, treating all these points as follows.
Oh, so Judea will not be completely free from paying tribute, but only from the levies specified in the appended letter.
Right. That makes sense. King Demetrius to his brother Jonathan, of course, a very noble title, Brother Jonathan, and to the nation of the Jews, greeting. We hereby send you for your information a copy of the letter which we wrote concerning you to our kinsman Lasthenes. I think it's Lasthenes. King Demetrius to his father Lasthenes, greeting. So he's quoting a letter.
Yes.
It's a letter within a letter.
The honorific title father may signify that Lasthenes was a high-ranking minister in the royal court.
Yes, that makes sense especially because they use kinsman also to describe him.
Yes.
We have decided to reward for their loyalty towards us the nation of the Jews, our friends, who have been steadfastly just in their relations with us. We confirm them in the possession of the territory of Judea, as well as the 3 nomes of Apharima, Lydda, and Ramathaim. The nomes and all that belong to them have been annexed to Judea from the Samaritus.
Tell me when you get to the end of 36.
Okay. For all Jews who offer sacrifices in Jerusalem, we abandon our claim to all the following: to the value of the royal revenues which the king used to receive annually from the Jews, from the produce of the soil and the fruit trees, as well as to what is due us from now on in tithes, and what is due us in tolls and the salt pens, and what is due us in crown money. So no more salt tax, no more, they're basically just not taxing the churches anymore. They're tax exempt.
Right.
Yeah. Or just the Jerusalem one, but still. Not one of these concessions shall ever be revoked. That's the end of 36.
Okay. So, first of all, these exemptions that Demetrius allows are similar to those that Demetrius I is said to have allowed.
Mm-hmm.
What is interesting is the way recipients of the exemptions are described. Quote, all those who offer sacrifice in Jerusalem. Is this similar to the release from tolls and to the tax-free status of Jerusalem? Or is the nation of the Jews now being defined as those who sacrifice in Jerusalem? Demetrius promises that these grants shall last forever, a promise that he will soon revoke. On this question that's brought up about all those who sacrifice in Jerusalem, there's a bit in here. It says, the punctuation and meaning of verse 34, where that's brought up, are debated. The NEB and REB say that the 3 districts were transferred for the benefit of the priesthood, quote, those who offer sacrifices in Jerusalem, end quote. The RSV and NRSV connect these words with the release from various taxes, including those on crops, fruits, and the salt and crown taxes. But Demetrius offers neither release from tribute nor the withdrawal of the citadel garrison, which were Jonathan's real aims.
Well, sucks for him then, huh?
Yeah.
Take care now to have a copy made of all this, and see to it that it is given to Jonathan and set up within the Temple Mount in a conspicuous place.
Just so they know it's there, it's noticeable.
It's conspicuous.
There was a common practice in the Hellenistic world of providing the recipient of a grant with a copy of the provisions. Sure. Frequently, the recipient would see to it that a permanent copy engraved on stone or metal was set up in some sacred enclosure. That's useful.
The conspicuous place is because it is a memorial.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that would make sense. Either way, let's continue. King Demetrius perceived that the land lay quiet under his rule, and no power opposed him. Accordingly, he dismissed all his troops. That's so stupid.
Yes. So
That's the dumbest thing.
Yeah, I don't need these guys.
Hold on, because there's no war now, you're like, everything's fine. We don't need an army. You guys can go home. But if everyone gets word that you don't have an army anymore, people are going to attack.
What I've heard is that there were periods of history that favored having a militia or Minutemen-like thing where you would have men arise and join the ranks when necessary and then put their arms down when time's of peace.
Well,
it's probably similar to that. That's my super guess, but that's also pretty dumb. I agree.
There's a bit in this commentary. Historians report that Demetrius, or his chancellor, was cruel to the citizens of Antioch. When Demetrius dismisses the regular troops, he keeps the mercenaries. He finds himself embattled on two fronts, from the unemployed soldiers and the harassed citizens of Antioch, and from supporters of another pretender to the throne, the son of Alexander, which I guess you'll get into.
So, he dismissed all of his troops, sending everyone home except his mercenaries, whom he hired from the islands of the Gentiles. As a result, all the troops who had served his ancestors hated him. There was a certain Tryphon, who previously had served Alexander. So there should be some stuff on Tryphon, especially his name.
Originally, Trypho's name was Diodotus. Trypho means magnificent, luxurious. He is probably identical with the Diodotus, who was a former general of Alexander and who, together with Hierax, attempted to crown Ptolemy VI as king rather than have Demetrius II rule.
So this book is slowly falling apart. This cover.
Yeah.
The Maccabees one?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
There's also a bit here. Trypho, the name means self-indulgent. He was born in Diodotus. So, pick one.
That's interesting. Let's see if there's a note on that in here. Tryphon was originally an epithet, meaning magnificent or luxurious. Then a name. Okay. That helps a little bit, actually. Okay, so Diodorus. No, that's talking about a different Diodorus. Okay, I don't know. He doesn't actually say anything about Diodorus. That's weird. Either way, let's continue. So, Tryphon perceived that all the troops were grumbling against Demetrius. Thereupon, he went to Imbaclius, the Arab who was the guardian of Antiochus, Alexander's little son.
So, since coins with the image of Antiochus VI date from the year 167 of the Seleucid era, or 145 BCE, these events must have taken place soon after Alexander's death in midsummer of that year.
And importuned? Okay, whatever. Importuned him to hand the child over to him to become king as his father's successor. Tryphon told him how Demetrius' decrees had won him the hatred of his troops. There he remained for many days. Jonathan, sent a message to King Demetrius asking for the expulsion of those occupying the Acra in Jerusalem and those occupying the forts, on the ground that they were waging war on Israel. Demetrius sent Jonathan the following reply: "Not only shall I do as you request for you and your nation, but I will also confer distinction upon you and your nation if my cause prospers. Now, therefore, be so good as to send me soldiers to support my cause, for all my troops are in revolt." Thereupon, Jonathan sent 3,000 valiant soldiers to him at Antioch. On their arrival, the king rejoiced that they had come. Then the people of the city assembled in the center of the city, to the number of 120,000 men. That's quite a lot.
Sure, 120,000 men.
I mean, maybe people in a city, a big city, but just men.
Maybe. I don't know. I'll give it to them. They can have 120,000 men.
I mean, yeah, it was a big state, I guess.
Yeah. What verse are you on?
I just finished 45.
45.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, 120,000 men with the intention of doing away with the king. The king fled to the palace. But actually, these are Jonathan's men. Yeah, no, I highly doubt it's 120,000. Anyways, the king fled to the palace, but the people of the city seized control of the city thoroughfares, and began to attack. The king summoned the Jews to the rescue. They all rallied together around him, and they dispersed throughout the city. They slaughtered on that day in the city a total of 100,000. They set fire to the city and took much booty on that day. They had saved the king. Congratulations. Good job, guys.
While First Maccabees does not mention the actions of the king's mercenaries in these events, the Greco-Roman historian Diodorus Siculus does not mention the Jews, and so one can sense the nationalistic flavor of the accounts.
Perceiving that the Jews were masters of the city and had it at their mercy, the people of the city, in their despair, cried out to the king, begging him, "Grant us an armistice and make the Jews stop attacking us in our city." They threw down their arms and made peace. The Jews' prestige stood high with the king and with all his subjects, and their fame spread throughout his kingdom as they returned to Jerusalem heavily loaded with booty. And so Demetrius sat firm upon the throne of his kingdom, and the land lay quiet under his rule. He, however, broke all of his promises. He turned hostile to Jonathan and failed to reward Jonathan for the loyal services he had rendered him, and caused Jonathan much distress. Some time afterward, Tryphon returned, bringing with him Antiochus, who was still a very young child. Nevertheless, he was proclaimed king and was crowned with a diadem. All the troops whom Demetrius had heedlessly cast off railed to Antiochus and fought Demetrius, who fled in utter defeat. Tryphon took over the elephants and became master of Antioch. So he pretty much adopted Antiochus.
Yeah, Alexander's kid.
Yeah.
Kind of rose him through the ranks, and now he is kind of in control of the region, of a region, yeah. A letter written in the name of little King Antiochus came to Jonathan as follows. I want to do this in like a child's voice, but I don't think I should.
Before you
use
do,
use Tiny's voice. He's your voice actor.
Oh, okay.
Before you do, about that bit you just read, the first army Demetrius sends against Tryphon is defeated. Trypho, is defeated. Gaining strength, Trypho wins control of Chalcis and then, in 145/44, forces Demetrius to leave Antioch and move to Seleucia or Cilicia. The author of First Maccabees reports a single battle in which Demetrius is defeated and forced to flee, making no mention of his destination.
Anyways, so here's the little letter. I confirm you in the high priesthood and grant you power over the 4 gnomes and make you one of the king's friends.
So just
Thank you.
every time we get a new king,
Thanks, kiddo.
he has to get everything.
Yes.
Every time.
Yep. He sent Jonathan gold goblets and a table service and gave him permission to drink from gold goblets and wear purple and use a gold brooch. It does say brooch.
Does.
Although it's probably a brooch.
It's a brooch.
He also appointed Jonathan's brother Simon Strategos over the area from the ladder of Tyre to the Egyptian border. So general.
Mm-hmm. More importantly, Antiochus makes Simon governor of the whole coastal region, the Paralia, from the ladder of Tyre to the borders of Egypt.
Let's continue. Thereupon, Jonathan marched out and made a tour of the Trans-Euphrates province, passing through the cities. All the troops of Syria rallied to him as allies. He also marched to Ascalon, and the townspeople received him with honor. From there, he marched to Gaza, but the people of Gaza barred their gates, so that he besieged the city, burning and plundering the suburbs. God, what a douche.
What?
Please don't come in here. We don't want you in here.
Well, I'm going to siege your city and burn it.
Yeah, I'm going to.
And plunder.
Yeah, wow, okay. What an ass. The people of Gaza then asked and received an armistice from Jonathan, who took the sons of their officials as hostages, sending them off to Jerusalem. Thereupon he marched through the country all the way to Damascus. So he is now kidnapping people, making them prisoners effectively. Okay.
They're not Jews. They could be slaves then.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Well, Jews can also be slaves according to the rules.
No,
right?
no, they have to be they would be indentured servants. You have to let them go after 7 years. That's the rule.
They don't have
There's a loophole,
name, right? It's still your servant.
Yeah,
right?
but there's the loophole though.
Yeah.
Either way. So you're a dick, Jonathan. There, word came to Jonathan that Demetrius's commanders had come to Cadiz in Galilee with a large force intended to divert him from his mission.
So the NRSV translates that to remove him from office. But the proper way of going about it is what's written there, which is to turn him away from his mission of consolidating the hold of Antiochus the Sixth in the area from Gaza to Damascus.
Fantastic. Yep. Jonathan marched to meet them. Meanwhile, Jonathan had left his brother Simon behind in our country.
In our country, probably Judea.
Well, yeah. Simon encamped because the thing is, this isn't a letter or anything. So saying in our country is just weird.
Yeah, but he's done that before.
Has he?
Yeah.
They switch.
Weird. Okay. I guess I didn't notice it before.
They do say our multiple times.
Gotcha. Simon encamped against Beth-zur and besieged the defenders, keeping it under attack for many days. They asked him for an armistice, which he granted them. After expelling them, he occupied the town and installed a garrison to guard it. So it was just like the other dude, right? Was it? It wasn't Demetrius. It was Ptolemy, I think. Right? That was the guy
I think.
before who just kind of went from place to place. And
They both did.
I mean, yeah, but now he's doing it.
Yeah, that's not helping.
Well,
Yeah.
a lot of them do it.
Yeah, I guess that's what you do when you're a ruler. You do that. As for Jonathan and his army, they encamped by Lake Gennesaret. Yeah, by Lake Gennesaret. And then made an early morning march to the plain of Hazor. An army of foreigners confronted him in the plain. The foreigners had detached a party to lie in ambush against Jonathan in the mountains, while the main body met him face to face. And of course, lying in ambush was a tactic used a lot.
Yeah.
Still is. When the ambush party emerged from their hiding place and joined battle, all Jonathan's men fled. Not one of them remained. Oh, here's something interesting. Except Mattathias, son of Absalom, and Judas, son of Calphi.
Nothing more than that Judas, son of Calphi, was one of the two men who did not desert Jonathan. Mattathias, son of Absalom, was the other. This may be the Absalom who was one of the ambassadors sent to Lysias in 2nd Maccabees, which we'll get to.
Sure.
Jonathan, in the midst of the battle, well, he'll do this ritual mourning thing, which you'll get into.
Okay. Anyways, and Judas, son of Calphi, commanders of the elite troops. Thereupon, Jonathan rent his garments, put earth upon his head, and prayed. On returning to do battle against the enemy, he defeated them and put them to flight. When his own fleeing men perceived what had happened, they turned back and joined him in pursuit all the way to the enemy camp at Cadiz, where they themselves then encamped. The number of foreigners killed on that day reached 3,000. Jonathan returned to Jerusalem.
Wow. Apparently,
Jonathan's going to get his tens of thousands.
there is nothing more known about the entire family of Calphi other than this Judas guy. So they came out of nowhere, and now they're gone.
Well,
And it's gone.
Usually you should have a long history going all the way back to the beginning with those tribes.
Yeah.
They usually do, but not
that
today.
the end of the sections we're reading today?
Yes, it is. That was the end of the sections. I guess Jonathan's just an ass.
Yeah.
I mean, he pretty much did what the other kings were doing.
Well, why wouldn't he be?
I mean, the road less traveled.
I guess. Well, hey, if you've all enjoyed the stream today, then be sure to give us a like and buy us stuff on our Amazon wish list.
Share, subscribe,
Patreon.
And buy
Patreon.
yourself cool things, wacky and fun T-shirts, Teespring. It's out there.
Yeah.
And there's on our Patreon, you can get the scripts from things that we do for $1.
You could get T-shirts. You could be on the show. You could do a whole bunch of stuff on Patreon.
Yep.
And obviously, you can just get the T-shirts yourself. Actually, you know what? Because you are in quarantine right now, you need yourself a good T-shirt.
But you don't necessarily want that shipped to you.
No, you want it shipped to you.
Oh, yes. You want it shipped to you.
Yes, you do. Get yourself a T-shirt. Don't get coronavirus.
Yep.
Because our T-shirts come without coronavirus.
Probably.
Especially the Behold T-shirts, because our hopeful sponsor, Behold Furniture Polish, is a coronavirus remover or whatever. So
We probably just got the video demonetized, but
that's a good point.
yeah. Who cares?
Coronavirus.
We got a literal,
COVID-19.
It's a literal plague.
I know.
It's pretty bad.
going
it's
everywhere.
not a literal plague. It's a virus.
It's not. Yeah, it's not the plague, but
But it is a
yes,
plague.
yes,
Generic.
yeah. It's a bummer how fast it's spreading too.
Yeah.
It's a real bummer.
Yeah, it's a bummer, all right.
And we can't, like, test everybody.
Well,
Or we choose not to.
Yeah.
We probably can't even because there's a limited supply
Too
many people.
of tests. Yeah, and too many people.
Yeah.
One of my friends might have coronavirus.
Well, are they
Not anywhere near us, don't worry.
above the age of 65?
No,
No.
Also-
do they have pre-existing conditions?
I don't think so.
There's a high likelihood that they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think so too. But here is one of the kickers. Recently in Wisconsin, there was a doctor that was diagnosed with coronavirus, and he worked at a children's hospital. So then they had to test 200 children for coronavirus because he worked at that hospital. And I don't know the end of that story, but I want to know the end of the story.
Wow. Well,
Yeah, real bad
they'll-
situation.
The kids will be fine. Just keep them out of the retirement homes. Not like they want to go there anyway. Kids.
Yeah, they don't want to see their grandparents and great-grandparents. No one wants to do that. Anyways, thank you everyone for joining us. That was the end of the show today. And on Sunday, we will be covering some Psalms.
Yep.
We don't have that many more
Oh man.
Woo!
episodes to do.
Close
We're so
to
close.
finishing Psalms.
7 more episodes.
7 more episodes and then we're done
Yes,
with Psalms.
with Psalms.
Then we have more Bible to get through.
Oh, Proverbs
shit.
next. Oh, jeez. Okay.
But
Either way, we will see you Sunday.